I'm Desmond, 30 years old, and I've always been the responsible son. The one who followed rules, got straight A's, and built a respectable career. My younger brother Matthew, though, he's been the golden child despite his wild streak and carefree attitude. When the invitation arrived for his engagement party at our parents' estate, I hoped it might finally be a chance to heal our fractured relationship. I never imagined that evening would change everything I thought I knew about family. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how my own parents tried to destroy my life at what should have been a celebration. Growing up in the Parker family meant living with certain expectations. Our father, Richard Parker, built Parker Industries from nothing into a multi-million-dollar technology consulting firm. Our mother, Linda, managed the social calendar and family image with military precision. From the outside, we were the perfect American success story. Two sons raised in privilege destined to continue the family legacy. But the reality inside our home told a different story. Matthew, 3 years younger than me, somehow became the center of our parents' universe from the moment he was born. Where I was expected to be perfect, Matthew was allowed to be human. His B grades were celebrated while my A+s were considered the bare minimum. When he wrecked his first car at 16, our parents bought him a newer model. When I asked for help with college tuition for Stanford, instead of the family-approved Princeton, I was told to apply for scholarships if I insisted on going against family tradition. Despite this, I excelled. I graduated top of my class with dual degrees in computer science and business. I worked 80-hour weeks at prestigious firms building my skills and reputation, all while watching Matthew drop out of college twice before half-heartedly joining the family business, where he was immediately given a vice president title that took others decades to earn. 3 years ago, I finally gathered the courage to pitch my own software platform to my father. The system I developed would revolutionize how Parker Industries served clients, potentially doubling revenue within 5 years. His response: "Interesting, but not the direction we're looking to go. Besides, you're too valuable in your current position." 6 months later, I resigned and launched my own startup, Horizon Solutions. My parents were livid. My father called it betrayal. My mother suggested I was having a mental breakdown. Only Matthew seemed genuinely supportive, telling me privately that he admired my courage. The first 2 years were brutal. Starting a tech company requires capital, connections, and clients. I had some savings and my expertise, but without my family's support, doors that should have opened remained firmly closed. Several potential investors backed out after mysterious calls. Clients who initially seemed enthusiastic suddenly went silent. I never could prove it, but I suspected my father's influence. Still, I persevered. I lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, pouring everything into Horizon Solutions. I built a small but dedicated team who believed in my vision. We secured a few modest contracts and developed our core platform. We weren't thriving yet, but we were surviving. Then came Matthew's engagement to Rebecca Williams, daughter of a prominent family in our social circle. The invitation to their engagement party arrived in an expensive cream envelope with gold lettering. My first instinct was to decline. The thought of facing my parents, their friends, and their judgment made my stomach turn. But Amber, my girlfriend of 8 months, convinced me otherwise. "This could be a chance to mend things," she said, her green eyes earnest, as we sat on my worn couch. "Besides, it's for Matthew. He's always been in your corner." Amber was right about Matthew. Despite our parents' obvious favoritism, we never let it come between us. He called regularly, met me for lunch when he could slip away from the office, and genuinely wanted to know about my business. "You really think they want me there?" I asked, turning the invitation over in my hands. "The invitation came with a handwritten note from your mother," Amber pointed out. "That has to mean something." The note had simply said, "We hope you'll join us for this special occasion." Not exactly warm, but more acknowledgement than I'd received in months. So, I decided to go. I even spent money I couldn't really spare on a gift for Matthew and Rebecca, a beautiful handcrafted clock that reminded me of one Matthew had admired in a shop window during one of our lunch meetings. I wrapped it carefully in expensive paper, adding a heartfelt card expressing my happiness for them both. The night before the party, I lay awake, imagining reconciliation. Perhaps seeing my genuine happiness for Matthew would soften my parents. Maybe this celebration would remind us all that we were family despite our differences. I pictured my father pulling me aside, acknowledging that while he didn't understand my choices, he respected my determination. I imagined my mother hugging me like she used to when I was very young before expectations overshadowed affection. "You seem nervous," Amber noted as we dressed for the party. She looked stunning in a dark blue dress that complemented her blonde hair. "Just hoping for the best," I admitted, adjusting my tie. We couldn't afford designer labels, but I'd made sure we both looked appropriate for the upscale event. "Whatever happens," she said, squeezing my hand, "I'm right beside you." I kissed her forehead, grateful for her unwavering support. "Let's go make nice with the Parkers." As we drove toward my parents' estate in my sensible sedan, such a contrast to the luxury vehicles I grew up with, I allowed myself to hope. Family relationships can heal. People can change. Maybe this party would be the beginning of a new chapter for all of us. The Parker estate sprawled across 3 acres in the most exclusive neighborhood in Boston. As we approached the wrought iron gates, I could see that no expense had been spared for Matthew's engagement celebration. The long driveway was lined with elegant white lanterns. The mansion itself was illuminated with professional lighting that highlighted its Georgian architecture. Luxury vehicles filled the circular driveway and overflowed onto the manicured lawn where attendants in uniforms directed traffic. "Wow," Amber whispered as we handed the keys to a valet. "This is something else." I nodded, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. I'd grown up here, but returning now, as almost an outsider, felt disorienting. The grand entrance hall was filled with flowers, arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. A string quartet played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. "Desmond, you made it." My cousin Taylor approached, air-kissing both my cheeks. "And who's this?" I introduced Amber, watching Taylor assess everything from her dress to her shoes in one practiced glance. "Lovely to meet you," Taylor said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Desmond, everyone's been wondering about you. How's that little business project going?" "Horizon Solutions is doing well," I replied evenly. "We just signed our 10th client last month." "How nice. Small businesses need support too, I suppose." She patted my arm condescendingly. "Your parents are in the main hall. They've outdone themselves tonight." As she drifted away, Amber squeezed my hand. "Is everyone in your family like that?" "Just wait," I muttered. We made our way through clusters of family, friends, and business associates. Each conversation followed a similar pattern. Superficial pleasantries followed by barely disguised, probing about my situation. No one outright mentioned my departure from Parker Industries, but the subtext was clear in every interaction. "There he is." A genuine voice cut through my discomfort. Matthew appeared, his face lit with a real smile. He embraced me warmly then, "Amber, I'm so glad you came." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, meaning it. "Congratulations again." "Is Rebecca here?" "Right behind you," said a warm female voice. I turned to meet my future sister-in-law for the first time. Rebecca Williams was tall and elegant in a champagne-colored dress, her dark hair swept up in an intricate style. She had intelligent eyes and a genuine smile. "I've heard so much about you," she said, taking my hand. "Matthew speaks very highly of his brilliant brother." "All lies," I joked, instantly liking her. "Actually, I'm familiar with your work," Rebecca continued. "My firm considered implementing your logistics solution last quarter. Very impressive architecture." I was surprised and touched. Rebecca worked for a major financial institution, exactly the kind of client Horizon Solutions needed. Before I could respond, a photographer appeared, insisting on capturing the moment. As we posed, I caught sight of my parents across the room. My father Richard still cut an imposing figure at 62. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his posture military straight. He wore an expression I recognized well, pleasant for the public, while his eyes calculated every detail. My mother, Linda, elegant at 59, surveyed her perfect event with satisfaction, occasionally touching her diamond necklace, a nervous habit she'd never acknowledged. They saw me but made no move to approach. Instead, they engaged enthusiastically with Rebecca's parents, laughing at something Mr. Williams said. "They'll come say hello soon," Matthew assured me, noticing my gaze. "They're just playing host." But an hour passed, and still my parents managed to circulate through the entire party without making their way to me. Amber and I found ourselves at the bar where I ordered a scotch I sorely needed. Desmond Parker. My Uncle James appeared beside us. The prodigal entrepreneur returns. Unlike most of my relatives, Uncle James had always been fair. He was my father's younger brother who'd chosen academia over business, earning him his own form of family skepticism. "Uncle James, good to see you." I introduced Amber. "So how are you really doing?" he asked after some small talk. "And don't give me the polished version." I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "It's been challenging. We're making progress, but slower than I'd hoped." James nodded thoughtfully. The Parker name opens doors, but it can close them just as quickly when Richard decides to make a point. He lowered his voice. "Watch yourself tonight, Desmond. Something feels off." "What do you mean?" He glanced toward my parents, who were now chatting with a state senator. "Just be careful. Family business should stay private, not become entertainment." Before I could ask for clarification, my father finally approached. He clasped my shoulder firmly. Not quite a hug, but more acknowledgement than I'd expected. "Desmond, good of you to come." His tone was neutral, his eyes assessing. "Thanks for including us," I replied. "It's a beautiful party." A brief flicker of something, pride acknowledgement, crossed his face. "The Williams family has significant connections. This union will be advantageous for everyone." He turned to Amber. "And you must be." "Amber Johnson," she supplied, extending her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Parker." "Amber works in environmental law," I added, proud of her accomplishments. My father's interest visibly diminished. "Interesting. Well, your mother has arranged a special presentation for the gifts. You should make your way to the East Room in about 15 minutes. With that, he moved on to more important guests. It wasn't the warm reunion I'd fantasized about, but it wasn't open hostility either. I counted it as progress. The evening continued with dinner served at elegantly appointed tables. Amber and I were seated far from the main family table alongside distant cousins and colleagues from Parker Industries whom I barely knew. I tried not to take it personally. As dessert was being served, a subtle tension seemed to fill the air. The waitstaff moved with increased purpose. My mother stood tapping her crystal glass with a silver spoon. "If everyone would please join us in the East Room, we have a special presentation for the happy couple." As guests began moving toward the large adjoining room, Uncle James caught my eye from across the table. His expression held a warning I couldn't decipher. The East Room of the Parker mansion had been transformed into something resembling a luxury showroom. A raised platform stood at one end, draped in ivory silk. Elegant chairs were arranged for Matthew and Rebecca, with smaller seating areas for immediate family. A professional photographer and videographer were positioned strategically. "This seems excessive even for your parents," Amber whispered, as we found seats in the family section. I nodded, increasingly uneasy. Gift-giving at engagements in our social circle was typical, but this elaborate setup suggested something more calculated than celebration. My mother took center stage, radiant in her designer dress. "Tonight we celebrate not just an engagement, but the joining of two exceptional families, Matthew and Rebecca. Please come forward." The couple moved to their designated seats, looking slightly embarrassed by the formality. My mother continued with a practiced speech about legacy commitment and family values that somehow managed to reference Parker Industries at least 5 times. "And now we present our gifts to honor this occasion." What followed was essentially a showcase of wealth and connections. Rebecca's parents presented the couple with the deed to a waterfront property on Cape Cod. My parents unveiled a scale model of a luxury home they were having built for the couple, complete with architectural renderings and a video tour. Various family, friends, and business associates followed with extravagant offerings, rare art stock portfolios, vintage wines. Each gift was photographed, the couple's reactions captured for posterity. Through it all, Matthew looked increasingly uncomfortable, while Rebecca maintained a gracious smile that grew more strained with each presentation. And now, my mother announced with unusual emphasis, a special gift for our son Desmond, who has joined us tonight. A murmur of interest rippled through the crowd. Matthew looked confused. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. A waiter appeared at my side, presenting a small, elegantly wrapped box on a silver tray. The box was distinctive, the same heavy cream paper and gold ribbon as the invitation. "Please," my mother gestured, "open it now." The room fell silent. Even the photographer stepped closer. Something cold settled in my stomach as I carefully untied the ribbon and removed the paper. Inside was a plain white box. When I lifted the lid, I found a stack of official-looking documents. Confusion gave way to disbelief as I read the top page. It was a court summons. Parker Industries was suing Horizon Solutions, suing me, for theft of intellectual property, breach of confidentiality, and several other allegations. The hearing date was 2 weeks away. I looked up, stunned, to find my mother watching me with a small, satisfied smile. "You should be grateful," she said, her voice carrying in the silent room. "We could have sent this through official channels, but we wanted to give you the opportunity to resolve this as family." The blood drained from my face as understanding dawned. This wasn't a private matter. This was a public humiliation disguised as consideration. My parents had orchestrated this entire scenario, inviting me to the celebration, waiting until I was surrounded by everyone in our social and business circles, and then delivering what amounted to a professional death sentence for my company. "What is this?" Matthew stood, moving toward me. "Dad, Mom, what are you doing?" My father stepped forward, his expression stern but with an underlying satisfaction that made my skin crawl. "Your brother took proprietary information when he left Parker Industries. Information he's been using to compete directly with this family's legacy. We've been patient, hoping he'd come to his senses, but it's time to protect what we've built." "That's not true," I said, finding my voice despite the shock. "Every line of code, every business process at Horizon is original. I never took anything." "The courts will decide that," my father replied coldly. The room had erupted into whispers. I could see phones discreetly recording the scene. Tomorrow, this would be the talk of our entire business community. "I never thought you'd stoop this low," I said quietly, looking between my parents. "Using your own son's engagement to publicly attack me." "Don't be dramatic," Desmond, my mother, chided. "This could have been avoided if you'd simply returned to the company where you belong." Matthew had reached my side, his face flushed with anger. "You planned this, tonight of all nights." Rebecca had joined him, her expression one of horrified disgust. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker, this is completely inappropriate." Amber stood beside me, literally shaking with rage. "You invited him here just to ambush him. What kind of parents are you?" My father's expression hardened. "This is family business. Perhaps those not actually family should refrain from comment." Something snapped inside me then, not into pieces, but into clarity. I carefully returned the papers to the box and stood, my movements deliberate and calm despite the storm inside. "Thank you for making your position perfectly clear," I said, my voice steady. "Matthew, Rebecca, I'm sorry for the disruption to your celebration. I wish you both every happiness." I reached for Amber's hand. With as much dignity as I could muster, we walked through the crowd of staring faces. No one tried to stop us. As we reached the door, I heard Matthew arguing furiously with our parents and Rebecca's father, demanding explanations. The valet retrieved our car in record time, perhaps sensing the urgency. Neither Amber nor I spoke until we were through the gates and back on the main road. Then, in the safety of our car with only Amber as witness, I finally let the mask drop. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. My breath came in shallow gasps. Amber guided me to pull over, and when the car stopped, she held me as the full weight of my parents' betrayal crashed down. The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur of shock and betrayal. Amber took the keys from my shaking hands and drove us home, occasionally glancing at me with concern as I stared silently out the window. By the time we reached my modest building, the initial numbness had worn off, replaced by waves of anger, hurt, and fear that threatened to drown me. Once inside, I collapsed onto the couch, the lawsuit papers falling from my hand onto the coffee table. "They planned this," I said, my voice hollow. "They invited me there specifically to humiliate me in front of everyone who matters in our industry." Amber sat beside me, her hand warm on mine. "It's unconscionable. I can't even imagine how anyone could do that to their own child." The reality of the situation began sinking in beyond the emotional trauma. This lawsuit could destroy everything I've built. Even if it's baseless fighting, it will drain resources we don't have. And the publicity. I ran my hands through my hair. No one will want to work with us while this is hanging over our heads. That night was the longest of my life. Sleep was impossible. I alternated between pacing the small living room and staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening, every interaction with my parents over the past 3 years. Had they been planning this all along? Was this always their endgame? Morning brought no relief. I called Carlos, a law school friend who had helped with Horizon's initial contracts. They can't possibly have a case, I insisted when we met at his downtown office later that day. Everything we've developed has been from scratch. Carlos looked grim as he reviewed the documents. The problem isn't whether they can win Des, it's whether you can afford to fight. Parker Industries has a legal team on retainer and virtually unlimited resources. They can drag this out for years. So they're counting on bankrupting me before we ever get to trial, I concluded bitterly. Most likely. And there's the reputation damage. Clients get nervous about these things, especially when dealing with a startup versus an established name. He was right. Within days, 2 prospective clients withdrew from negotiations. A small investor who had been considering backing our next development phase politely declined further meetings. Our existing clients began asking uncomfortable questions about service continuity. I threw myself into work, spending 16-hour days at the office, sleeping on the couch there most nights. Amber brought me food, clean clothes, and steady reassurance, but I could see the worry in her eyes growing with each passing day. A week after the party, Matthew called. I almost didn't answer, but some part of me needed to hear what he had to say. Desmond, I had no idea. He began, his voice tight with emotion. I swear to you, if I'd known what they were planning, I would have warned you. I believed him. Matthew had his faults, but deliberate cruelty wasn't among them. I know you wouldn't have been part of this. Rebecca and I are furious. We left the party right after you did. Her parents are appalled too. He paused. We're considering postponing the wedding. Don't do that, I said automatically. Don't let their actions control your happiness. How are you holding up? Really? I leaned back in my office chair, looking around at the small space that housed all my dreams and ambitions. I'm fighting. The lawsuit is garbage, but fighting it will cost money we don't have. 3 clients are already getting nervous. I want to help, Matthew said firmly. I have some savings of my own, not Parker money, but enough to maybe help with legal costs. His offer touched me deeply, but I declined. This isn't your battle, Matt, and taking your money would just give them more ammunition. After we hung up, I stared at the phone, feeling both comforted by my brother's support and devastated that our family had fractured so completely. The next day brought another revelation. Rebecca called asking to meet for coffee near my office. She arrived looking elegant but tense, glancing around as if worried about being seen. I wanted you to know something, she said once we'd settled at a corner table. This lawsuit isn't really about intellectual property. Your parents are in trouble. I frowned. What kind of trouble? Financial trouble. Parker Industries has been losing major clients for the past year. Their technology is becoming outdated, and they're not innovating fast enough. She twisted her engagement ring nervously. Your father made some risky investments trying to catch up, and they backfired. They need your expertise, Desmond. They need what you've built at Horizon. The revelation stunned me. Parker Industries struggling. My parents desperate enough to sue their own son. It seemed impossible, yet it explained the extreme measures. How do you know this? I asked. My father sits on several boards with clients who've left Parker Industries, and Matthew's been finding discrepancies in the company financials. She leaned forward. They're trying to either force you back into the company or acquire your technology through this lawsuit. It's desperation, not just malice. Understanding my parents' motives didn't lessen the betrayal, but it shifted something in my perception. They weren't just being cruel. They were terrified of losing everything and lashing out at the person they thought could save them. As the weeks passed, the strain began taking a visible toll. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and found myself jumping whenever my phone rang. The few remaining Horizon employees watched me with concerned eyes, clearly wondering if they should be updating their resumes. Amber was my lifeline through it all. She brought legal colleagues in to offer pro bono advice. She forced me to eat regular meals and occasionally sleep in an actual bed. When panic attacks hit in the middle of the night, she held me until the shaking stopped. "You need to take care of yourself," she insisted one evening after finding me still at my desk at 11 p.m. "You can't fight this if you collapse." "Everything I've built is slipping away," I admitted, the words catching in my throat. Not because we failed, but because my own parents would rather destroy me than see me succeed independently. "Then don't let them win," she said simply. "Find another way forward." Those words echoed in my mind the following morning when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Marcus Wellington was a venture capitalist I'd pitched to months earlier without success. He was known for backing innovative startups, but also for being extremely selective. "I heard about your situation," he said after declining coffee. "The lawsuit, the party ambush. Word travels fast in our circles." I stiffened, preparing for another rejection. "If you're concerned about investing in a company under litigation—" "Actually," he interrupted, "that's exactly why I'm here. I admire how you've handled this. No public mudslinging, no emotional outbursts, just quiet dignity and continued focus on your business." I blinked in surprise. "Thank you, but my father sued me when I left the family oil business to pursue tech investments," he continued, shocking me further. "Said I was betraying generations of tradition, tried to freeze my trust fund, block my business relationships, the works." "What happened?" A small smile crossed his face. "I built a portfolio worth 3 times what his company was worth. Not out of spite, but because I believed in my vision. Now we have Christmas dinner together and never discuss business." By the end of our meeting, Marcus had offered not just investment but partnership. His capital would keep Horizon afloat through the lawsuit and beyond. His connections would reassure nervous clients, and his public support would send a powerful message to the business community and to my parents. "Why are you doing this?" I asked as he prepared to leave. "Because talent and integrity deserve backing," he replied, "and because sometimes family is the last to recognize either." For the first time since the engagement party, I felt a glimmer of hope. Not just that Horizon might survive, but that it might actually thrive despite, or perhaps because of, my parents' actions. That night I slept a full 8 hours for the first time in weeks. Marcus Wellington's investment changed everything. The immediate cash infusion allowed us to hire additional developers and expand our marketing efforts, despite the ongoing lawsuit. His public endorsement sent a clear message to the industry: Horizon Solutions was not only legitimate but worth betting on. "We need to use this momentum," I told my team at our first strategy meeting, after securing the funding. "The lawsuit is a distraction, not a roadblock." With renewed confidence, we accelerated development on our flagship product, an integrated platform that solved precisely the inefficiencies that were causing Parker Industries to lose clients. We recruited 3 key engineers who had recently left competitors, including Janet Rivera, a brilliant systems architect. My father had interviewed but dismissed as not a cultural fit corporate speak for being a woman in a predominantly male environment. "I interviewed at Parker Industries last year," Janet told me during her first week. "Your father spent most of the interview talking about their legacy and traditions. When I asked about innovation opportunities, he basically patted me on the head." "His loss our gain," I replied, genuinely appreciative of her talent. We moved to larger offices, nothing flashy but functional and better suited to our growing team. Amber helped design the space, ensuring it reflected our company values: collaborative, transparent, and forward-thinking. So different from the mahogany-paneled, hierarchical environment of Parker Industries. 3 months after the engagement party disaster, we launched our enhanced platform. The timing coincided with Tech Forward, the industry's most prestigious annual conference. Marcus had secured us a presentation slot, not in the main hall where established companies like Parker Industries presented, but in the innovation showcase for emerging technologies. I spotted my father across the exhibition floor on the second day. He looked older somehow, the confident swagger replaced by a tight, controlled posture that broadcast stress to anyone who knew him well. He saw me too, but quickly turned away, engaging a passing attendee in conversation. Our presentation drew a standing room-only crowd, surprising even the conference organizers. I delivered the pitch I'd rehearsed for weeks, demonstrating how our system could reduce implementation costs by 40%, while increasing efficiency by 35%. The applause afterward was gratifying, but the crowd of potential clients gathering around our booth immediately following was even better. By day's end, we had leads from 2 major corporations and 4 mid-sized companies. One was Innovatech, a rising star that Parker Industries had been courting unsuccessfully for months. That evening, the conference announced the nominees for its annual Innovation Award. Horizon Solutions was listed alongside 4 other companies, including Parker Industries. The irony wasn't lost on anyone familiar with the situation. Social media buzzed with commentary, most of it painting me as the underdog facing off against my own family. Matthew texted, "Saw the nomination news. Proud of you, bro." 2 weeks later, we won. I accepted the glass trophy on a stage just 30 feet from where my parents sat, their expressions carefully neutral. My acceptance speech was brief and professional, thanking my team and mentioning Marcus's support. I didn't reference Parker Industries or the lawsuit, but I did close with "Innovation thrives when we have the courage to forge new paths even when the familiar road seems safer." The industry publication Tech Weekly ran a feature the following day, "David versus Goliath: How Horizon Solutions is Disrupting the Consultant Model." The article mentioned the lawsuit, but framed it as an established company attempting to stifle innovation rather than protect intellectual property. 3 former Parker Industries clients contacted us that week. 6 months after the engagement party, Horizon Solutions posted its first profitable quarter. The lawsuit was still dragging on, but Carlos had filed motions to dismiss most of the claims, and the judge seemed skeptical of Parker Industries' evidence. More importantly, we were no longer fighting for survival but planning for growth. Amber and I celebrated with a simple dinner at my apartment. As we shared a bottle of wine far less expensive than what had flowed freely at my brother's engagement party, she surprised me with a proposition. "Move in with me," she said, her green eyes serious. "My place is bigger, it's closer to your office, and I'm tired of having half my clothes in 2 different apartments." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "That's quite the romantic proposal." "I'm a practical woman," she replied with a smile. "But if you need romance," she reached for my hand. "I love you, Desmond Parker. I love your integrity, your resilience, and your kind heart, despite everything you've been through. I want to build a life with you, starting with sharing an address." We moved in together the following weekend. My few possessions looked almost comically sparse in her spacious 2-bedroom apartment, but it immediately felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived since leaving my parents' house. For the first time since that devastating night, I felt genuine peace. Horizon was thriving. I had Amber. My relationship with Matthew remained strong despite the family conflict. I had built something valuable entirely on my own terms. Then my parents showed up unannounced at our office on a Tuesday afternoon in October. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker are in the reception area," my assistant Zoe announced, her expression uncertain. "They don't have an appointment. Should I send them away?" I stared at her, momentarily frozen. In the 7 months since the engagement party, I hadn't spoken directly to either of my parents. All communication had gone through lawyers. Sir Zoe prompted. "Security can escort them out if you prefer." I took a deep breath. "Number, I'll see them. Please show them to the conference room." As she turned to go, I added, "And Zoe, could you call Marcus and let him know what's happening?" The walk to our small conference room felt longer than usual. Through the glass walls I could see them, my father standing stiffly by the window, my mother seated with perfect posture at the table. They looked like strangers wearing my parents' faces. I entered without greeting, closing the door behind me. "This is unexpected." My mother spoke first. "We tried calling, but you've blocked our numbers. I've been communicating through legal channels as advised by counsel. Why are you here?" My father turned from the window. Up close, the changes in him were more apparent. New lines around his eyes, a certain diminished quality to his once commanding presence. "We want to drop the lawsuit," he said without preamble. I kept my expression neutral despite my surprise. "Why now? Your legal team was insisting just last week that the case would proceed to trial." Because it's destroying everyone involved, my mother said, her voice lacking its usual certainty. The company, our family, your brother's wedding plans. Matthew postponed the wedding. She nodded. He and Rebecca refused to set a date until, as they put it, this vindictive lawsuit is resolved and proper apologies are made. Rebecca's parents agree with them. I'm sorry to hear that I said meaning it, but that doesn't explain why you've suddenly changed your position after months of aggressive legal action. My father sank into a chair, a gesture of defeat I'd never witnessed from him before. Parker Industries is failing, Desmond. We've lost 30% of our client base in the past year. The publicity from this lawsuit, from what happened at the engagement party, it's accelerated the decline. Clients don't appreciate family drama played out in public, I observed. No, they don't, he agreed. But it's more than that. They're leaving because our competitors, including Horizon, are offering better solutions. We've fallen behind. The admission clearly cost him. Richard Parker had built his identity around being at the forefront of his industry. Acknowledging failure, especially to the son he'd tried to destroy, must have been excruciating. The lawsuit was never about intellectual property, I said. It wasn't a question. My mother had the grace to look ashamed. We thought we could force you back, that faced with financial ruin you'd return to Parker Industries and bring your innovations with you. So you publicly humiliated me, threatened my livelihood, and damaged my professional reputation to make me want to work with you again. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. It was desperation, my father admitted, and it was wrong, profoundly wrong. For a moment, silence filled the room. Through the glass walls, I could see my team trying to pretend they weren't watching this family drama unfold. News of my parents' presence had clearly spread through the office. What exactly are you proposing? I finally asked. We drop all claims immediately, my father said. Issue a public statement acknowledging the lawsuit was unfounded. Pay your legal costs. It was more than I'd expected, but still incomplete. And my mother leaned forward. And we want to hire Horizon Solutions as consultants to help modernize Parker Industries systems. I stared at them. After everything, they still hope to benefit from my work. You're asking me to save the company that tried to destroy mine. We're asking for a chance to make amends, my father countered. Professionally and personally. Matthew and Rebecca refuse to move forward with wedding plans until this is resolved, my mother added. They've taken your side completely. Even your Uncle James won't speak to us. I considered their offer. The practical benefits were clear. The lawsuit would end, my legal expenses would be covered, and a consulting contract with Parker Industries would be lucrative for Horizon. But the emotional equation was far more complex. I need to consider this carefully, I said finally, and discuss it with my team and advisors. Of course, my father nodded. We understand. As they prepared to leave, my mother paused. Desmond, we were wrong. Not just about the lawsuit, about everything. The way we treated you compared to Matthew, the way we dismissed your vision. We were wrong and we're sorry. The words I'd longed to hear for years now felt hollow, forced by circumstances rather than genuine recognition. Still, it was a beginning. After they left, I called an emergency meeting with my leadership team, including Marcus, who arrived within 20 minutes. It's a reasonable offer from a business perspective, Janet observed after I outlined the situation. Their client base is still substantial, even with the recent losses. A consulting contract would be profitable. Marcus was more cautious. The question is whether you can work with them without compromising Horizon's culture and independence, and whether you personally can handle that level of interaction given the history. I spent the evening discussing the decision with Amber, who listened patiently to my circular reasoning. What do you really want, Des? She finally asked. Not what makes business sense, not what they deserve. What do you want? I considered her question carefully. I want to build something meaningful. I want Horizon to succeed. I want a relationship with my brother without this cloud hanging over us. And your parents. I don't want to carry this anger forever, I admitted. But I can't pretend everything is fine now just because they're facing consequences. The next morning I called my parents to my office. This time I was prepared. Horizon Solutions will accept a limited consulting contract with Parker Industries, I began. We'll help modernize your core systems and train your team on implementation. In exchange, you'll withdraw all legal claims, cover our expenses, as offered, and issue a public statement we jointly approve. My father nodded eagerly. Absolutely. When can we start? I'm not finished, I continued. This is strictly a business arrangement. It doesn't automatically repair our personal relationship. That will take time, consistent effort, and genuine change from both of you. My mother's face fell slightly. Of course. We understand. I'll work with Parker Industries because it's the right business decision for Horizon. I'll consider rebuilding a relationship with you both, because Matthew and Rebecca deserve to celebrate their engagement without this conflict overshadowing everything. But my forgiveness isn't guaranteed, and it won't be immediate. They accepted my terms without argument. Another first. As we finalized the details, I found myself studying them with new eyes. They were just people. Flawed, frightened people who had made terrible choices out of fear and pride. Understanding this didn't excuse their actions, but it helped me see a possible path forward. The following Sunday, Matthew and Rebecca hosted a small dinner at their apartment, the first time our family would be together since the engagement party disaster. The atmosphere was tense initially, but as the evening progressed, a fragile normalcy emerged. We discussed the wedding plans, now back on track. We avoided business talk entirely. As we prepared to leave, my father awkwardly asked if we might have lunch the following week to discuss the consulting project. It was a small step, but perhaps the beginning of a new, more balanced relationship. 6 months passed, bringing remarkable changes to every aspect of my life. Horizon Solutions not only survived but thrived, growing to a team of 35 with offices in Boston and Chicago. The consulting work with Parker Industries proved valuable for both companies, though not without challenges. My father struggled initially with taking direction from me in areas where Horizon's expertise was superior, but gradually adapted to our more collaborative approach. My relationship with Matthew strengthened through the ordeal. Free from our parents' dynamic of favoritism, we discovered a genuine friendship based on mutual respect. He continued working at Parker Industries, but took on a more assertive role in modernizing their business practices. One sunny Saturday in April, Amber and I walked along the Boston waterfront, enjoying the first truly warm day of spring. We'd been living together for nearly a year, settling into a comfortable rhythm of shared meals, weekend explorations, and supporting each other through work challenges. I have something to ask you, she said, as we paused to watch sailboats in the harbor. I turned only to find her kneeling on one knee holding a small box. Desmond Parker, will you marry me? Joy bubbled up inside me. Aren't I supposed to be the one doing the kneeling? She grinned. When have we ever done things the conventional way? Yes, I laughed, pulling her up into an embrace. Absolutely yes. 2 weeks later, we hosted a small dinner party to announce our engagement. Matthew and Rebecca were there, of course, happily married themselves for just 3 months. To my surprise, Amber had also invited my parents. Are you sure? I'd asked when she told me. Our relationship with them remained complicated, civil but guarded. They're trying, Des, she said gently. Your mother calls me every week just to check in. Your father sent that article about environmental law cases that helped with my big project. They're making an effort. She was right. In small, consistent ways, my parents were attempting to rebuild trust. They had respected my boundaries, never pushing for more closeness than I was comfortable with. The lawsuit was long settled, with my father keeping his word about the public statement and covering our legal expenses. When they arrived for dinner, my mother hugged me tentatively. Congratulations, Desmond. Amber is wonderful. My father shook my hand, then surprised me by pulling me into an awkward embrace. We're very happy for you both. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. We avoided contentious topics, focusing instead on wedding plans and Rebecca's news that she'd been promoted at her firm. My parents seemed smaller, somehow less intimidating than the towering figures of my childhood. My father asked thoughtful questions about Horizon's latest projects. My mother showed genuine interest in Amber's work. After dessert, my father cleared his throat. Linda and I have been doing some thinking about the future of Parker Industries. I tensed slightly, but his next words surprised me. We're considering a transition plan. Not immediately, but within the next few years. Matthew has expressed interest in taking over eventually with significant changes to the company structure. What kind of changes? I asked cautiously. More collaborative leadership, less hierarchy. Some of the approaches you've implemented at Horizon, actually. He looked somewhat embarrassed by this admission. That's great, I said, genuinely pleased for Matthew. He'll do well with that approach. We thought perhaps. My mother began hesitantly. You might consider joining the board of directors. Not as an employee, but as an independent advisor. Your perspective would be valuable. The offer stunned me. A year ago, they had tried to force me back into the company on their terms. Now they were asking me to help shape its future while respecting my independence. I'll consider it, I said, meaning it. Thank you for the offer. Later that night, after everyone had left, Amber and I sat on our balcony enjoying the quiet. You've come a long way, she observed. All of you. I nodded, reflecting on the journey. I never thought we'd get here. After that night at the engagement party, I thought that was it. Family over. What changed? She asked. I stopped needing their approval, I realized. I built my own life, my own success. And paradoxically, that's when they started to see me clearly for the first time. The truth of that statement resonated deeply. For years I had measured my worth through my parents' eyes, trying desperately to earn the recognition they lavished so easily on Matthew. The painful irony was that only when I stopped seeking their validation did I finally receive it. The following weekend I met my father for our now regular Saturday morning coffee. These meetings had begun as strictly business discussions about the consulting project, but gradually evolved into something more personal. I have something I want to say, he began after we'd covered the usual pleasantries, something I should have said long ago. I waited, sipping my coffee. I'm proud of you, Desmond. Not because of Horizon's success, though that's impressive. I'm proud of the man you've become despite my failures as a father. The words I'd longed to hear throughout my childhood now brought a complex mix of emotions. Gratification, sadness for all the lost years, cautious hope for the future. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. I was wrong about so many things, he continued. I thought legacy meant continuing exactly what I had built in exactly the same way. I thought strength meant never admitting mistakes. I was wrong on both counts. We all make mistakes, I offered. The question is whether we learn from them. He nodded, a hint of the old confidence returning. I'm trying to. It's not easy to change at my age, but I'm trying. As summer approached, Amber and I finalized plans for our fall wedding, a moderate-sized celebration that reflected our values rather than social expectations. My parents offered to contribute financially but respected our decision to keep things relatively simple. In July, Horizon Solutions won a major government contract that would secure our growth for years to come. The same week, Parker Industries launched its modernized platform, developed with our consultation but implemented by their team. Both companies celebrated their respective successes, no longer locked in a zero-sum competition. Through it all, I found myself reflecting on the lessons of the past 18 months. The betrayal at Matthew's engagement party had been devastating, but it had also been the catalyst for profound change in every aspect of my life. Without that public humiliation, would I have found the strength to fully break free from my parents' expectations? Would Horizon have attracted Marcus's attention and investment? Would my relationship with Matthew have evolved into Brocus's attention? True brotherhood rather than competition. The most valuable lesson was about self-worth. For too long I had allowed my parents' assessment to define me. Their approval or disapproval had shaped my choices, my ambitions, even my self-image. The painful severing of that dependency forced me to find value within myself, to recognize my own strengths, independent of their recognition. Forgiveness came gradually, not in a single dramatic moment, but in small increments. Not because my parents deserved it, though their efforts at amends were genuine, but because holding on to anger only limited my own happiness. Forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past, but about creating space for a different future. The final piece fell into place during a conversation with Uncle James, who had remained a steadfast supporter throughout the ordeal. You know what impresses me most, he said. as we walked through the park near his Cambridge home. You didn't become bitter. You had every right to, but you didn't let their actions define you. I came close, I admitted. There were some dark days. But you found your way through. You built something positive instead of focusing on revenge or resentment. That's rare, Desmond. That's character. His words stayed with me, illuminating the fundamental choice we all face when wounded, to become defined by our hurts or to use them as catalysts for growth. The scars remain. I would never fully trust my parents the way I once had, but they no longer limited my capacity for joy or connection. As Amber and I planned our future together, as Horizon Solutions continued to expand, as my relationship with my family slowly healed, I carried this understanding forward. Our worth isn't determined by others' validation. Our path isn't limited by others' vision, and our happiness isn't dependent on others' approval. The greatest freedom comes from writing your own story, even when others try to control the narrative. And sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't rage or revenge, but simply living well on your own terms. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with family after a major betrayal? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences that remind us we're never alone in our struggles. And remember, sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's the first step toward building something better. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength in your own journey toward healing and self-discovery.